Hello, my name's Leslie Strachan. I'm coming to you from Virginia. I'm a member of the Robert Burns Association of North America, or we know it as RABANA. In 2012, RABANA at their annual conference in Williamsburg, Virginia, put on a production of The Jolly Beggars. This was led by the Halton Peel Burns Club out of Canada. It was a full production where we did all the songs and all the recitatives in it and so forth. And I just want to tell you a little bit about that masterpiece if I can. Love and Liberty, a cantata, as Robert Burns liked to call it, it's much better known as The Jolly Beggars, was truly a masterwork. But unfortunately it's not quite as well known as perhaps our other masterwork when he did a narrative tale with Tam O'Shanter. The story behind The Jolly Beggars, or Love and Liberty, is that supposedly Burns, this was in 1785, that great creative year, 84, 85, the great creative years in Burns' life when he lived in Mauchline, was in the town of Mauchline that night with his two boon companions, Richmond and Smith, and they were in another little alehouse, and they had the story apparently that there were a number of vagrants had turned up at Pussy Nancy's. Now Pussy Nancy's was another alehouse, one not so much that Burns frequented but had known about, and it was one where the lower classes, the vagrants, the travelling people could find lodging for the night. And he heard that they were having a revel, or as he uses in this poem in the cantata, a splore. They were going to have a big old session. So he and his friends Richmond and Smith immediately went over there so Burns could get an idea. And apparently, seeing this, it brought forth this creative masterwork of this cantata, where in a cantata, for those that don't know, and I certainly didn't know exactly what a cantata was, but a cantato includes the spoken word as well as singing, as well as individual music and recitations. And Burns did this at this young age. He was amazing how he could do it. Anyway, as I say, it's not particularly well known, but in 2012, RABANA decided to perform it, and we did all the songs. There were 6 songs, although Burns actually, other people, some Burns scholars have claimed that perhaps there were as many as 8 songs, but we did all the songs. And I just want to give you a little bit of a taste of it tonight. We'll do 2 songs. The first song will be the Soldier's Song, and that will be done by Henry Cairney, who's the president of RABANA, and the second song will be the When I Was a Maid, Once I Was a Maid, and that will follow shortly afterwards. So the first recitavio that Burns used to introduce that great song was When light leaves bestrow the yard, or wavering like a bocky bird, Bedham's cold boreas blast, when hailstains drive wi' bitter skite, and infant frosts begin to bite, and hoary Cranroch dressed. Enacht at een, a merry core of randy gangrel buddies in Pussy Nancy's held their splore, to drink the roar of duddies. Wi' laughing and quaffing, they ranted and they sang, with thumping and jumping the very girdle rang. First, neath the fire in auld red rags, yin sat, wheel-braced wi' mealie bags, and knapsack all in order, and in his arms his doxy lay, wi' usquaba and blankets wan, and she blinked on her sojer. And aye he gies the towsy drab the tither skelping kiss, while she held up her greedy gab, just like an amiss dish. Ilk smack stilled and cracked still like ony cadger's whip. Then staggering and swaggering, he roared this ditty up.
I am a son of Mars who have been in many wars, and show my cuts and scars wherever I come. This here was for a wench, and that other in a trench, when welcoming the French at the sound o' the drum. Laddie daddle 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 dum deedle da, laddie daddle 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 dum deedle da, laddie daddle 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 dum deedle da, laddie daddle daddle at the sound o' a drum. My apprenticeship I passed where my leader beat his last, when a bloody die was cast on the heights o' Abraham. And I served out my trade when the gallant game was played, and the moral law was laid at the sound o' a drum. I largely was with Curtis among the floating batteries, and there I left for witness, and ne'er man a limb. Yet let my country need me, with Elliot to heed me. I'd clatter on my stumps at the sound o' a drum. Laddie daddle 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 dum deedle da, laddie daddle 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 dum deedle da, laddie daddle 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 dum deedle da, laddie daddle daddle at the sound o' a drum. And now though I must beg wi' a wooden airman leg, and money a tattered rag hanging over my bum, I'm as happy wi' my wallet, my bottle and my callet, as when I used in Scarlet to follow a drum. But though wi' hairy locks I must stand as winter shocks beneath the woods and rocks of times for a home, when the t'other bag I sell and the t'other bottle tell, I could meet a troop of hell at the sound o' a drum. Laddie daddle 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 dum deedle da, laddie daddle 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 dum deedle da, laddie daddle 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 dum deedle da. I could meet a troop of hell at the sound o' a drum.
The next recitavio introduces the next song, and that's going to be performed by Chrys Ballantyne, who has a wonderful delivery of it, and I know you'll thoroughly enjoy it. And she's the Marshal Chuck, oh, I once was a maid. Burns introduced it by saying, he finished, and the coober shook aboon the chorus roar, while fricted Ratton's backward look and seek the benmost bore, and a fairy fiddler for the nook, he skirls out, encore! But up arose the Marshal Chuck and laid the rowd uproar.
I once was a maid, but I cannot tell when, but still my delight is in proper young men. One of a troop of dragoons was my daddy, nae wonder I'm fond of a soldier laddie. The first of my loves was a swaggering blade, to rattle his thundering drum was his trade. His leg was so tight and his cheek was so ruddy, transported was I with my soldier laddie. For the godly old chaplain left him in the lurch, the sword I forsook for the sake of the church. He ventured the soul, but I risked the body. 'Twas then I pulled salts to my soldier laddie. Full soon I grew sick of my sanctified sod. The regiment at large for a husband I sought. From Gildan's platoon to Fife I was ready. I asked nae mair than a soldier laddie. But the truth it did lead me to beg and despair, till I met my old boy at the Cunningham fair. His rags regimental they fluttered so gaudy, my heart it rejoiced in my soldier laddie. And now I have lived, I know not how long, but still I can join in a cup or a song, and while with both hands I can hold the glass steady, here's to thee, my hero, my soldier laddie.
Oh, there you've heard a couple of the songs from Burns's wonderful Lubbin Liberty, a cantata. Thank you, Chrys Ballantyne and Henry Cairney. I hope this little short video has given you an interest in that wonderful piece of work that Burns spent so much time on, and I hope that you'll find it for yourself. Interestingly enough, when Robert Burns was asked about the cantata, because it was never published in his lifetime, It wasn't published until after his death, but he was asked about it in 1793 by George Thompson, one of his musical publishers, and Burns made a comment, he said, no, I'm not sure that I remember that, which most scholars I find that kind of hard to believe. How could he forget such a masterpiece? But if you spend time on it and you read the sentiments throughout that poem and that cantata, they perhaps didn't bode well for his position as a government worker. In closing, I'd just like to say one more thing about this cantata. Burns had always had this envy of the vagrants, of the poor people, that they had no worries in life. Even though they were at the very bottom of the social strata, they just didn't have a lot going on. All they had to do was worry about if they had something to eat or somewhere to sleep. So you could certainly see why he wanted to celebrate this life. And in the final part of Love and Liberty, Burns goes on with the last chorus to give us these words, which I think that not all of us remember where they're from, but once you've heard them tonight, you'll remember from whence they come. So Burns, as I say, gave us these words. A fig for those by law protected, liberty's a glorious feast, courts for cowards were erected, and churches built to please the priest. What is title, what is treasure, what is reputation's care? If we lead a life of pleasure, 'tis no matter how or where.